Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this. This is the second of our virtual community conversations. We've held one a couple of weeks back for Ham, Petersham and Richmond Riverside, and this evening we are going to be concentrating on Barnes, East Sheen and Mortlake and Barnes Common wards. My name is Gareth Roberts. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the leader of the council this evening. Not this evening. I'm the leader of the council all the time, but I'm the leader of the council, and this evening I'm acting as chairman of the event. Really, the idea is you won't hear very much from me throughout the whole of the evening because we have a panel of experienced and knowledgeable councillors for you to ask questions of. My role this evening will be to act very much like the ringmaster and just field the questions out to everybody. And on, I'm sure, what will be the very rare occasions that the panelists are stumped and don't know the answer to the question, I can act in the capacity of Jeremy Clarkson with this new sort of lifeline that they have on Millionaire of Ask the Host. So that's what I'm here to do today. We have on the panel this evening, we have Councillor Paul Hodgins for Barnes Ward, Councillor Julia Cambridge for East Sheen, Councillor Brian Marcel for East Sheen. We have Councillor Avon, I believe, is going to be joining us shortly for Mortlake and Barnes Common. We have Councillor Bridges Westcott for Mortlake and Barnes Common. And we have Councillor Curran for Mortlake and Barnes Common. I understand that Councillor Joyce for East Sheen will be joining us later. We have a few rules for this evening. The event is being recorded and will be published after the event on the council website. All attendees, other than the panel, are muted, I'm afraid. However, if you do wish to speak, then all you need to do is write the word question in the chat function, which you can find in one of the little toolbars. So just write the word question. You don't need to write the whole question, and then I will come to you in turn so that we can get your question asked of the panel. If you do speak, it would be lovely if you could turn your camera on. It's not mandatory, but it would be nice. It's always good to put a name to a voice. And if you are using the chat function, only please use it to write question. Please don't start other chats, because what happens is that I then have to trawl through all of the chat in order to find the person that wants to ask the question. And we did one of these a couple of weeks ago on Twickenham Green, and we did miss one or two people who weren't able to ask their question because the chat was absolutely full of comments about various things. And of course, they went away empty-handed, and we don't want that. So, all of our attendees, including the panel, have got the event etiquette. This reminds them of the need to be respectful of all speakers, but we're sure we don't need to use that. But if we do need to mute or remove participants, the event staff will do so. So don't forget, folks, all of the panelists, this is, as we say, is the council shilling in the meter. So whilst you can be feisty if you wish, we're trying to avoid breezy party political points because nobody's coming along to that. What we're going to do first and foremost is to kick off with an opening presentation which gives you some idea of what the council has been up to over the last few dramatic months. So if we could now roll VT.
The first half of 2020 has been an extraordinary period for all of us. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound impact on all our lives. The council has not been immune. The pandemic has brought huge challenges to us and to the way in which we deliver services to residents. Throughout the whole period, we have been committed to providing key services to all residents and help to those who need it most. As a snapshot of some of the things we achieved in just the first month of lockdown alone, we provided more than 6,000 hours of home care. We provided social care for over 1,600 vulnerable adults. We answered over 2,000 calls to our community hub. We provided 47 rough sleepers with accommodation. We delivered over 500 books directly to residents from our libraries and saw a 365% increase in people using our online library services. We had over 42,000 views of our online sports classes. We collected an estimated 47 tonnes of waste and recycling every day. And we kept our 51 schools open, providing education for over 500 children of key workers and vulnerable families. We know that things haven't always been perfect, And many people have been frustrated by some of the lockdown measures that have been put in place, and the fact that some of our services had to stop to ensure the safety of residents and staff. But we've been committed to prioritising those most in need. During this challenging period, I have been blown away by the continued incredible community spirit that we have seen across the borough. The pandemic has brought out the very best in so many of our residents, with neighbours providing a helping hand, the weekly clap for our carers and frontline workers, residents donating to food banks, and the general willingness of so many to go above and beyond in their support for members of our communities. Following a call for volunteers, Richmond CVS received a staggering 3,000 applications from residents eager to help in any way they could. We have seen groups delivering food parcels, setting up virtual fitness classes, checking up on elderly residents that are shielding, and collecting prescriptions. This generosity from residents and local groups has been genuinely humbling. And as we look to the future and towards recovery, we know that there are still huge challenges ahead. The recovery period provides us with an opportunity to make environmental changes that are needed across the borough, and we have already started implementing some of these. For example, we have already started with our post-COVID-19 highway recovery strategy, looking at how we can ensure social distancing, encourage walking and cycling, and ensure our children can get to school safely. Over the next few weeks and months, we will be looking at other ways we can support local communities. And of course, residents will need to play their part in the future as they have done over the last few months. We've worked hard to ensure that businesses have received the funding they're entitled to, awarding a total of £35.79 million to over 2,100 local businesses. But now as our high streets begin to reopen, we all need to make sure that we support our local shops. Many of our businesses are run by local people, and if we don't use them, we will lose them. As we emerge from this difficult period and look towards recovery, we want residents to come on board and provide us with their thoughts and ideas on how we can create a better borough for all of our residents. This moment provides the Council with an opportunity to reflect and improve the way we work and engage with residents, and your support and ideas are key to that. Thank you for coming this evening, and I look forward to hearing from you all.
So, there you are, just a small snapshot in a very leaden, doom-laden voice. I apologise for that. Voiceover on that particular video. It's just there to give you some idea of the volume of stuff that the council has been up to over the last few months. Now, what we're going to be moving on to now is a quick ward update from each of the wards. We're going to be doing this in strict ward alphabetical order. So we'll kick off with the Bs, with Councillor Hodgins, who's going to give us a quick ward update for Barnes. Councillor Hodgins is muted, so if one of the tech elves could, thank you very much.
There we go. Thank you for that. And thank you, Gareth. And we've just got a couple of minutes. So very quickly, of course, the biggest thing that has happened in Barnes and two Barnes, as in the whole borough, has been COVID. And as we saw in that video, the action within the ward and by local residents and local groups has been superb. We've had, I think you saw some of the video there. We had services set up by the OSO to provide meals, working together with the Castleknock Community Centre. We had Fish really step up in the area to provide services. As councillors, we were helping in some of the deliveries and some of the shopping and supporting our residents. Of course, as we also heard in the video, the high street, which is so precious to us, has of course been heavily impacted. And we've been working with the council, with the government, to make sure that the funding is there for our residents and for our businesses. But as was said, we really need to now be supporting our local high streets in order to make sure that those local businesses, which are owned and run by people within our community, can be sustained, and we can come back as strong as we were before. And as councillors, we will be helping to promote that and working with businesses. Separate from COVID, of course, in Barnes, the biggest issue which continues is that impacting us is Hammersmith Bridge. And some people may have seen that TfL last week, in reviewing its budget, have put on hold while it discusses with the government the plans for the major re-strengthening of the bridge. There are funds for the temporary bridge that is planned, the cycling and walking bridge, although the planning application has not come in for that, and that is probably not likely to be in place until next year. So the plans for the bridge are not certain at the moment, and we will continue to be lobbying and working to make sure that does get in place, and lobbying TfL and the government in particular, and our local council. With
Excellent.
that, I will hand over. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Paul. Right, so now we move on to councillor updates for East Sheen. Let me see. So, Councillor Cambridge. Well, I suppose we best do the councillors in alphabetical order in each alphabetical ward. So, Councillor Cambridge kicks off for East Sheen, please.
Well, good evening, everybody. That film was fascinating. I'll concentrate on East Sheen, but a lot of the things sort of cross over there. So I'd like to pay tribute to Fish. I rang up Nikki from Fish when the lockdown kicked in, finding out what they were doing. Absolutely fantastic. Obviously, they had to stop doing their wonderful events like their dinners at the Hare and Hounds on Upper Richmond Road. She told me that they were really concerned, not just about feeding vulnerable and elderly people, and that was the key, vulnerable as well as elderly for Fish, but also the loneliness, basically, that might kick in, and the fact that they couldn't go and visit, other friends. So they set up a befriending telephone service, which was absolutely fantastic. Also Richmond CVS, but most of all, just the unsung heroes in the community. And I went and visited many people. When I say visited, I don't mean in person, obviously, but I heard from many people about the little things they were doing. Even on Nextdoor, if you clicked into East Sheen postcodes, you could see your contact within each road and who could maybe go and get you some pet food or whatever. And it was fantastic. I'm very, very proud of how East Sheen locals stepped up in this period. So what I'd briefly say is that we did have some issues. We obviously border and go into Richmond Park, and so a lot of the things that I was doing was maybe talking to the council, getting to Richmond Park, finding out about the issues to do with cycling, to do with parking, to do with toilets opening. So it was very Richmond Park centric. We had a little bit of antisocial behaviour brought on by the lockdown, which we might deal with later, but we were on to that straight away. So finally, I would say we're really promoting the shop local message in East Sheen at the moment. Myself and Councillor Marcel have been out on fantastic walkabouts, I'm sure he'll add to that, to really promote and say that we're there supporting local East Sheen businesses with their recovery moving forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Could somebody unmute Councillor Joyce, please? Thank you very. Oh no. There we go. Seamus, do you have anything you wish to update the residents on?
Yes, I do actually. Thank you for chairing the meeting, Robert. Yes, I've been busy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
That's good. Yes, I've been busy doing antisocial behaviour patrols in East Sheen. I actually spoke to a couple of beggars who come in for the day to beg from our residents and then go back to their hostels in Hammersmith. I've been reporting fly tipping, been keeping residents up to date on the Sheen Lane closure outside number 178 in relation to the removal of underground electric cables, etc. That's all been open again now. Keeping an eye on the ever-changing Royal Parks movement strategy. It's opening to all cyclists now from this weekend. It's still closed to motorists. I'll be keeping an eye on the potential developments on the school streets around our local school in Sheen. And it's just it's interesting to see all the what COVID has brought the community together, and everyone is helping their friends, helping their neighbours, and everyone is doing a great job. And hopefully this time next year we'll be back in a local Sheen village location for our community conversation.
Absolutely. Councillor Marcel, Brian, you're up next.
Thank you, Gareth. Am I unmuted? Yes, I am.
You are.
I am. Yes, as Councillor Cambridge said, we were walking the streets to try and help businesses open with the new laws. It is disappointing to see that business isn't really very good in East Sheen. We've got Feather and Black, Johnson's Shoes, Benson's for Beds, all closing, all with very large premises. Mm-hmm. There are one or two businesses that are benefiting who have thought out of the box and are doing some sort of home deliveries, and they're quite happy. But generally, I'm not happy about the level of business. I went walking today to check on the mask situation, and hardly anybody's wearing any masks, either in or outside businesses, so even with takeaways. So that's not so good. On the very positive side, our play area near Sheen Common in the woods there is going ahead. We're getting some plans together. The council very kindly allocated £60,000 for this, and it won't be enough, but that's fine. We'll go out and get some local funding for it. So I'm warning all of you who are on this call, I might come knocking on your door in the very near future. Milestone Green, we're trying to get some tables and chairs outside the Artisan Cafe now that that's been blocked off, and try and make that a really nice bustling place where people can enjoy. Prior to a £5 million investment from TfL to develop the site, which is great. And in keeping with that, we're looking at doing a farmer's market. And I see Tim Catchpole on the call, which is very good because he's volunteering Mess's services to lead on this, aren't you, Tim? So we're hoping to have one either outside the Sheen Library, linking up with the sort of Hare and Hounds parking place, or Milestone Green leading back a bit onto Sheen Lane. Doesn't much matter, but it's really good that we can do something like that. According to this, Councillor Joyce mentioned all these beggars and stuff, and it really is a problem. I've had lots of complaints from residents. Too many people are feeling sorry for them and actually giving them money and clothes. But of course, it's just going on drugs, and they're not homeless at all. So I think we've got to address that. No doubt we might get some questions on that.
Indeed.
And also cycling on pavements, especially around the cycle shops and everything, is not good. And some of these cyclists are quite aggressive, and that's a worry. We might well get some questions on that, but I think that's probably enough for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Brian. Right now, Paul Avon. I saw Paul's name earlier on the list, so we're moving to Mortlake and Barnes Common ward. So could somebody unmute Paul, and then we can hear from him.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Gareth.
We can hear you. You're a disembodied voice, Paul, but yes, we can hear you.
that might be for the better, so I would say. But you can't see me. I've been struggling with my IT this afternoon, hence why I was rather tardy in joining this meeting. So you can't see my mugshot at the moment, no? Just bear with me.
Hey, there we. Oh, we're now here in sound and vision, as David Bowie says. So off you go.
Well, thank you, Gareth, for chairing this evening. Obviously, there's some commonality in terms of the local groups, which Paul Hodgins and Brian and Seamus have mentioned, and I would echo my thanks to those local groups who've made a remarkable effort in helping the community in this awful crisis. Obviously, Fish, and one organisation which hasn't been mentioned is the Mortlake Community Association, who have made a brilliant effort in terms of keeping in touch with elderly residents. So I would pay personal thanks to them, and I'm sure everybody else would join me in thanking them. In terms of issues which have come up, I mean, obviously, again, there's a lot of commonality between the wards when we're all joined, so I won't repeat myself. I guess particularly in our ward, and I did join a meeting late, so this may well have been covered, but concerns how we approach transportation and walking around the ward post-COVID, and particularly the emails I get and which I echo is how we adjust accordingly, and that relates to the high street in particular, where there are certain pinch points outside M&S, for example, which need to be addressed, and I know we're looking into that. Other concerns which have been raised, which has been very high profile, has been the Waterman Arms, and they started quite early in the lockdown in terms of serving alcohol, and that led to a lot of individuals collecting on the terrace, and there's been a lot of concern about that. I think that has largely dissipated as other establishments have opened over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So I sense, and no doubt some people might take me up on this, but I sense that the situation has ameliorated, where there were a lot of people congested along that tight path, which you're all aware of on the terrace, and it made it difficult for residents to pass as people were drinking with their pints nestled on the wall there by the river. But I think that situation has improved markedly as other establishments opened and people have obviously spread out. So hopefully that situation has improved. Other developments of note is obviously the Stag Brewery, which has been called in, as you know, Gareth, by the mayor. Big concerns about that. I mean, obviously we're waiting in terms of when we can contribute to the next stage of the process. My personal concerns, which I dare say are echoed, is obviously the Chalkers Corner. I really hope that is taken off the table. And obviously the mayor has massive plans in terms of housing and how that is going to affect that particular development. Without any serious change in infrastructure in my ward, life will be a misery here. And as it stands, there is no significant change to the transport infrastructure, and all this needs to be looked at. Otherwise, it's going to be disastrous for my ward. But anyway, I won't go on. I've talked too much. Sorry again for joining you late, and I will let others contribute. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Paul. We move from the A's to the B's. So now we have Councillor Bridges Westcott. I never realised we had A, B, C for the ward councillors for Mortlake and Barnes Common. It's been 2 years, folks, and I've only just spotted that. So Councillor Bridges Westcott.
Hello, thank you, Gareth. First of all, I want to echo everybody's comments about thanking all the services and all of our charities who've really done amazing things during the COVID crisis, but also to our residents who have stepped up and dealt with so many things that I think none of us ever expected that we'd face in our lifetimes, and just the community spirit between residents and all of our services has been really quite amazing. So thank you. You know, we've all missed out on seeing friends, family, going and doing things we want to, birthdays, etc., etc. So a massive thank you to everybody. Again, I'll try not to repeat everybody. We all share a lot of things across these wards, but some of the things that I've been working on at the moment is mainly waste collection issues that I've been working on. So some bins not being collected, those sorts of issues. Looking a little bit further forward, and also thinking about how we now use public transport and sort of how we come out of this COVID crisis. I've been working with Caroline Pigeon in the GLA team to look at station access and tactile paving on the edges of stations, but also restarting the plan to look at the station lighting audit, which sadly went on hold because of the general election and then the COVID crisis. So looking at station lighting, particularly for the winter. So those are the things that I've been working on as councillor over the last sort of few months.
Thank you. Excellent. And finally, Gemma Curran.
I just saw someone mention that if we could mention our wards that we represent. Yes. So I represent Mortlake and Barnes Common, which is kind of an odd ward shape. It sort of goes up to Putney and out towards Chalkers Corner and then halfway down Barnes High Street. I think, you know, echoing everyone's thoughts about what everyone has been doing in the community is really important. I know that I was made redundant in March, which was expected, so it wasn't anything COVID related, but I phoned up Fish because I knew I had to have some time on my hands to see if I could do some volunteering, and they were very concerned because a lot of their volunteers themselves are in the over sort of 65 and would be isolating. So when the government's guidelines came out to say that, you know, they should be the vulnerable should be sheltering, they were very concerned. What was fantastic was that actually about a week later, some residents contacted me to ask how they could help, and I recommended they called Fish, and they said they'd already called and they had been inundated with people wanting to help. So I think that just shows the community spirit of this area. And obviously Fish I've been delivering to Mortlake residents, so I have, you know, it is quite a wide area that it helps out. In terms of issues I've been working on, I'm mainly working on, similarly to Alice, on the waste collection, which I'd like to say that they have done a good job considering that we've all been stuck at home and probably eating more. But there are obviously a few teething issues that people are experiencing. And then mainly similar to Councillor Avon, the towpath issues. So the towpath, we have 3 very nice pubs along on the towpath, and one has lots of outdoor seating area, which was being not used by the pubs, but definitely used by some residents. And so, you know, working with residents on that issue. And finally, just keeping in contact with the Stag Brewery, Mortlake Stag Brewery group, who have been having conversations with Resulton on the Stag Brewery development. And just really a heads up to people that hopefully there'll be they have been sort of amending plans from all accounts, and hopefully they'll be sharing those with residents as soon as they can. I think ideally they'd like to do an open event, but obviously with COVID that may be very difficult, so they will be looking to do an online or something similar. So just keep in contact with, I just recommend all residents keep in contact with Mortlake Brewery Association, because they are sort of working closely with the developer and keeping an eye on updated plans. Okay,
thank you, Gemma. Right, so that's the roundup from the wards councillors, everybody. What we're going to have now is just another short video. Too often we hear that the council is the body which takes money away. We're going to give some of it back. Don't get excited, it's not apes, peacocks and ivory by any means, but it is going to be £10,000 per ward. And you may think it's £10,000 per ward. When you think that that's 18 wards, that's going to be £180,000, which is going to be invested in the local community. And we have a short video, which is far better voiced over. It's by Councillor Millard, who's a professional actor, so he should be good at this, I think. And he's going to tell you all about the new community fund. Thank you.
A new £180,000 fund has been launched to help support community-led projects in every ward in the borough, helping to rebuild local areas and connect communities after the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The £10,000 pot for each ward is intended to support local initiatives, helping launch new ideas and developing projects to make a positive difference to our borough. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a widespread impact on how we deliver services and support local people. We welcome all ideas on how to improve your local area, particularly those that aim to help rebuild our communities, connecting people and finding new ways of supporting each other. Any individual, local group, charity or business can submit an idea or apply for a grant. Applications need to demonstrate how the project meets one or more of the following priorities. Enable local people to develop, agree and deliver their own responses to local issues and build stronger communities. Make public places more attractive, enjoyable and distinctive. Support local initiatives that address the causes of climate change and minimise the environmental impact of carbon, waste and pollution to protect the future of our borough and our planet. Promote the vitality of our town and neighbourhood centres. Widen participation in sports and physical activity. Enhance the artistic and cultural offer and protect the borough's heritage. Improve health and well-being. Improve crime prevention. Improve community assets. Before you apply, you will need to discuss your idea with your ward councillor to see how it fits with local priorities. You can do this by sharing your idea online or contacting your ward councillors directly. And then, your idea will be reviewed by ward councillors and officers to recommend next steps for your idea. This may include an application to the local area fund, but could also include signposting you to another source of support or funding for your idea. If the idea is suitable for the local area fund, we will invite you to submit a formal application. Once a complete application has been submitted, it will then be reviewed and we'll let you know if it has been successful. We look forward to hearing from you.
There you go, and that's why Jim gets paid the big bucks for doing the voiceover work and I don't. So that is just something to whet your appetite regarding the new community fund, which is being launched now. So get your thinking caps on, and possibly I see that there's been at least one person who has mentioned in the chat that they might like to ask a question about it later. So now is the time when we get fully interactive in this part of the evening. So we're going to be moving straight over to questions. At the moment, the final question I've got here is from Luke Tanier, I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm going to keep my eye on that question there as being the final point, just because we got you know, thousands on the panel, and they may all want to say something, so we'll be lucky to get through one question. So I'm going to go straight in. We have a pre-submitted question from Mr. Tim Patchpole, who wants to know about telephone masts and various planning-related issues. So Tim, are you there?
Am I unmuted?
Good, good. Now, Tim, we know each other of old, so you know my rules. It's a question, not a question, actually more of a short statement. So if we can have a question, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, many thanks to the council for the excellent efforts that they've been putting into our environment in the last 3-4 months. It's been great. The question is about the 2 aerial masts that were subject to planning applications during that lockdown period. Both were refused by the officers. They never went to committee. And what we've now heard as of last week is the Prime Minister declaring that aerial masts will no longer require planning permission. So my question, I've got 2 questions. One to the council, about whether it is their intention to issue an Article 4 direction whereby all aerial masts will continue to require planning permission. And my second question is really to the audience to find out from them about whether they are actually having problems with their mobile phone reception or not. Do we really need these aerial masts? So those are the 2 questions.
Okay, I'm not sure whether we'll be able to do the ask the audience element. We've already got asked the host.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll have a show of hands, can we?
But we had a quick chat about this beforehand, because obviously we knew it was coming in, and I think Paul Hodgins, you.
Yeah, Tim, I'm happy to say a few things about that. I mean, I don't necessarily speak on behalf of the council, and I know that Councillor Marcel also has a view on it. And you know, I'm learning these rules like you are. My understanding, and talking to council officers is these new rules that we talked about last week are obviously about 5G and preparing the way for 5G equipment to come in. I believe that new masts still need to be approved by planning and the council. But it's the extra equipment that comes in with 5G and the rules for taller masts, where masts already are, that don't require planning permission. And I believe the government still has to do some technical consultation on these rules before they all get finalized. Now, I know the council is looking at, well, it is considering Article 4 and the issues around Article 4. The issue around Article 4, as they see it, is that there have to be specific amenity reasons in order to put it in, and ultimately they could try to put in an Article 4 and it could still get rejected by the Secretary of State. I think the feeling is that it would be a bit of a stretch to put in Article 4 for amenity reasons for this, but it is being considered. So there's no commitment to it at the moment, but but they'll continue to look at it. But that's my understanding of the situation at the moment. And I'll hand over to Councillor Marcel.
Thank you, Paul.
Brian.
Thank you, Gareth. Well, I think my point is, well, when I read the email about it, I understood that all masts wouldn't need planning permission. I don't know, but clearly this is a 5G issue rather than necessarily a 3 or a 4G. So obviously we want to see the expansion of 5G, but not at the price of disturbances and that kind of thing. My issue is Huawei, where the Prime Minister is very clear about banning Huawei infrastructure because the Chinese are allegedly spying on us. And certainly the latest planning permission issue I've had at Painesfield Avenue, they admit there will be Huawei antennas involved. So I've simply said to them that there doesn't seem much point giving permission if you've got to take out these antennas down the line anyway, according to government policy. So I think that's a grey area, and I think that should be considered very much by the council for future and existing applications.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Are there any other councillors who wish to come in on this issue of telephone masts? Councillor Cambridge, I see you raise a finger.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. The applications, and good evening, Tim. I'm not sure, are you here representing MES or as an individual tonight?
Representing MES on this one.
Okay, so thank you for that. This is hugely important, and I know that we've, and I'm sure all the other councillors have had correspondence from you on the other two masts that you mentioned. As you know, I did put in a letter to the council, basically of objection to those masts. I stood with the residents. I heard from quite a few of them, particularly railway side of East Sheen, and it was a concern. I don't know if I'm allowed to throw a question back to you, but what is your concern as a resident about this new application?
I would be concerned. These masts are visually intrusive, and I wouldn't be happy about it. But some of the masts that we've already seen on the roadside are fine if they are, as it were, lost among the trees on the roadside. But the one on the proposed at the bus turnaround in North Walpole Way was very exposed, and to see something like that from our side of the railway, from your side, Julia.
Thank you. I mean, that's useful to know, and I'm gathering information about this new application. It is a concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Tim. And we're now going to move on to the list of questions, which is growing. Could I please ask people not to write question in the chat function? Just write the word question, and then we can come straight to you. So, Sarah Travers, you have our first unscripted question of the evening.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
So this is, can you hear me okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay, brilliant. So this is really mostly to Mortlake and Sheen councillors. I'm very well aware that Richmond Council is not responsible for the Upper Richmond Road, but nevertheless the Upper Richmond Road goes through the Richmond area, and I'm sure that those of us who have crossed with the Sheen Lane Upper Richmond Road crossing have noticed that a car obviously crashed into the traffic light recently. I very much hope nobody was hurt. I certainly haven't heard anything about it. But it is illustrative of the fact that this is a junction where drivers routinely indulge in behaviour that is basically dangerous for pedestrians, and in this case it's resulted in something very tangible as far as an accident is concerned. It's Transport for London's responsibility, but I can tell you, having complained about inconsiderate driving behaviour as an individual, I do not feel particularly that my voice is heard by Transport for London, and I'm pretty certain that Richmond Council's voice would be heard rather more. So Julia, I know that we've had correspondence about this. I'm very interested in an update on where we are, because this question has been asked for years, certainly by me for at least 3 years, and so far nothing has happened, and I'd be very eager to understand if something will happen in the near future. Subsidiary bonus question, if I may. Happy to
if it's short, yes.
Probably not allowed, you can cut me off if you want. There's been discussions on social media about the possibility of making Sheen Lane occasionally a pedestrian area. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'd welcome councillors' perspectives on whether that's something we could have to encourage local restaurants and businesses in the post-COVID environment.
Okay, I'm going to bring, so Julia, you mentioned specifically, so quick update on safety aspects of the Upper Richmond Road, if you please, and then I'll bring in anybody from Mortlake and Barnes Common and East Sheen wards.
Good evening, Sarah. Thank you for coming on the call. You always write so eloquently about travel issues and also safety issues. And I think me and you converse as parents about the safety of the Upper Richmond Road, which is paramount. I did raise a question today. I haven't got an answer back, but I'm happy to email you about the bollard issue. It's really concerning. I'm told that, so this was in the very controversial junction of Milestone Green, Upper Richmond Road and Sheen Lane. I think I, along with a lot of residents, would like some changes to that junction, most definitely. I'm waiting to hear about the bollard. I'm not happy about how it's cordoned off. As far as the safety and the reconfiguration, if it ever happens, of Upper Richmond Road and Sheen Lane, that is something that we're waiting on, basically, from TfL. They had a lot of plans, as you know, for this £5 million investment and change. And despite a few emails to them, I haven't been able to really get a lot of answers for tonight, because I knew it would come up. And it's really important to you and it's really important to me. And the safety aspect of that crossing, something has got to change, and it's got to change very, very quickly, because it is dangerous. And that destroyed bollard is a testament to how dangerous that road is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Marcel, I can see there. I can see Councillor Bridges-Westcott as well.
Thank you, Gareth. Yes, thank you very much indeed, Sarah, for your question. Part of the plan, we actually, I suppose, have been lobbying TfL for 7 or 8 years now about this junction, which, as you rightly say, is very, very dangerous. In their new plans for Milestone Green, this £5 million Councillor Cambridge was talking about, are plans to improve it. For example, at the junction of Sheen Lane and Upper Richmond Road south, that stop bit is going to be moved back quite a bit, and that little bit of road widened to let cyclists come through and make it the right-hand turn a bit safer. The bollards in front of Barclays Bank are going to be removed to stop the traffic going into a sort of one-way squeeze, so that will flow a bit better. And frankly, I can't remember all the other stuff, but the problem is it wasn't down for development until next May, and I don't know if that's been delayed again because of COVID. But anyway, May is the earliest it's going to happen. Yes, there are accidents waiting to happen, but at least after 7 years, we're getting some kind of traction. So I can only cross our fingers. And at the moment, we're not getting any response from TfL at all about this, and we have been chasing it up.
Sorry, Gareth, can I just
Julia,
on the back of agree with everything Councillor Marcel has said. I just want to say, obviously, the improvements he's talking about would have gone to consultation. So I just want to assure the residents that anything that was going to happen there was going to be consulted on, supposedly this July.
Okay.
Nothing would have happened without that.
Thank you very much. Now I've got Councillor Bridges-Westcott and Seamus. I saw you waving. I've asked for you to be unmuted. So Alice, and then Seamus, and then let's try and keep answers brief, and we can crack on to the next one.
Yeah, no, sorry, actually, this is more of a question back, and I'm really sorry for that, Gareth. I know you'll tell me off. But I think one of my questions back, and sorry if this is getting in the middle of you and your communication with Councillor Cambridge, but obviously it's presumably not just that junction, because in order to build speed, you have to kind of speed along the road. And I know Julia and I were walking along Sheen Lane the other day, and we were both really horrified to see someone going at least 60 miles an hour down Sheen Lane, which is horrendous. So is there anything, particularly maybe on the Upper Richmond Road West side, but also thinking, I mean, I know you mentioned something about Sheen Lane just now, but is there anything else that you would suggest perhaps longer along that road?
Perhaps suggested by email might be the way forward.
Sorry, Gareth.
And then you will have a record, perhaps. Yeah?
I was just saying, from my perspective, I think that junction is particularly dangerous. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. Seamus, where are you? You're here. You have a question. You have a point to make.
Yes. But last February, when we were all in a normal society, the three Sheen councillors, we met with TfL in the Artisan Cafe actually in Milestone Green, and they gave us an update, and they said that there would be a consultation to local residents going forward. However, the option of a yellow box junction was not on the table by TfL, because TfL felt that a yellow box junction would create more potential accidents, because people would be rushing up to either escape the junction or not get caught in the junction, and TfL felt that that wasn't on the table, and their plan was an Oxford Circus style crossing, where you can go on all four corners, you can cross all the way. However, getting back to Sarah's second question about the Sheen Lane businesses and having it potentially pedestrianised, you know, a great outside the box idea. However, where would the displaced traffic go if Sheen Lane was to become pedestrianised even for a few hours? Because that would automatically impact the already congested Upper Richmond Road anyway. So, you know, great idea, but where would the displaced traffic go? And I understand that local residents and businesses especially would welcome some of Sheen Lane being pedestrianised. However, you cannot just pedestrianise something, you have to think of the bigger picture, and this would cause further chaos on the neighbouring roads around the junction of Sheen Lane and Upper Richmond Road. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Seamus. Sarah, I hope that has answered some of your questions. I am sure that you will have more, because if there's one thing which excites comment, it's the Upper Richmond Road and traffic in East Sheen. I know, I've seen it. So we're going to move on now to Tara Benson. You will be unmuted and you will get a chance to ask your question. Thank you.
Hi everybody. This
Hello.
is the very first time I've done any local politicsy things, so absolute novice. I may be asking a really moronic question. However,
no.
It seems to follow on around traffic calming. I live on Castle now, so I am on the road that goes straight down to the bridge, and quality of life is dramatically improved by not having traffic going over the bridge. Sheen Lane, people are wanting to pedestrianise, but all of these ideas are sort of small areas that don't take into account a greater strategy, I suppose. And I wanted to find out how as a local, someone that has lived in the community for 10 years, how do I and how do you guys influence traffic strategy in the area so that we're not just kind of like displacing traffic from one place to another, but we're considering as part of the green recovery how we want our borough to be moved around with it?
Okay, that's fair enough. Who fancies taking a crack at this one?
Cycling also, you know, I'm thinking about cycling, walking, I'm a big walker. It's the whole strategy I'm interested in.
I see Councillor Hodgins raising his hand. Could we unmute Paul? If councillors can
there we go. Sorry. I'll try to stay.
I know it's force of habit.
I have to sit here very quietly like a mouse. So anyway, so let me just say a couple of things. And thank you very much for that. And that is absolutely not a moronic question, and actually very very important question. And I think, you know, I'm seeing, you know, I mentioned Hammersmith Bridge earlier. I'm Barnes councillor, so I absolutely understand the comment about quality of life on Castle now, which has improved for many, but it's had a knock-on effect and it's not improved. Certainly for those in Sheen and NBC on the Upper Richmond Road. And you make a critical point that all of these things are connected. And without trying to jump ahead questions, which I see about the park as well, we've got, you know, the issues of COVID, we've got the issues of the bridge, we've got the issues of the park, and they all have an impact on each other, and they do need to be taken as a wide strategic view and plan, and we can't just deal with these things piecemeal. Now you're asking the question about how you can get have a voice and have influence. That is certainly through us as councillors and getting in touch, and we're very happy to come and meet and talk about all of the various issues and get your views about what you would like to see happen. And not only local councillors, but also then writing into the administration as well, and which we can pass on. But you know, the best way is through us as local councillors and that dialogue, which we're very happy to have. So you know, we can follow up after this. But you know, there are a lot of competing you know, interests and views in all of this, and they're not easy to reconcile. So it does very much help for us as councillors to be getting your views on it.
And sorry, just to follow up on that, Paul.
Yes, of course.
Is there a strategy? Is it being developed? Is there a focus on the green recovery? Is there someone within the council or one of you perhaps who is really visionarily thinking in a very visionary way, thinking about, you know, we have a very green borough. How much greener can we be? Do we need all this traffic? Every single car seems to have like one person in it when there's a traffic jam. I think there could be, I don't know if there is a strategy. Is there?
So this, let me answer this as best and diplomatically as I can, and not try to be too political about this, but be saying, I mean, there certainly is a lead. There's a lead member at the council. There are lead officers for it, and we as councillors are all trying to influence that. There is an overall strategy on environment and climate change and air quality. There are maybe opinions that we all have about whether they're connected properly and how much they flow through to specific action. And you know, we're all trying to influence that. But there is a common, I would say, you know, common view across parties that we live in a very green borough. We have common aims about quality of life. There are practical ways that people need to get around. There's the kind of perfect world of which, you know, we're all trying to get to, but then, you know, some of us have different views on the practicalities. You know, and you know, I'm a cyclist. Not everybody can be a cyclist. we're still dependent on cars, whatever is, you know, and we're trying to get better options. But you know, we're trying to deal with those things. So I think it is through us that the strategies that exist, we need to help influence at the council to get practical action on them.
Thank you.
Okay, Seamus, did I see you raising your hand there, or was okay? Can we just quickly unmute Seamus?
Yes, I think going forward, as people have already mentioned, and not going over old points, I do think the borough needs an independent traffic plan review for all of the borough, because there's no point in fixing Sheen if it's going to affect Mortlake and Barnes. There's no point in fixing Mortlake and Barnes if it's going to affect Sheen. So what I would really like, and maybe you could clarify this, Gareth, is it your vision in the next couple of years to have an independent traffic strategy plan for the entire borough to make it fair for everyone?
I'm not, as we've said, I'm not here to answer the question, Seamus. An independent inquiry or plan? I'm not sure whether the independent nature is a holistic approach, perhaps, but I'm not sure the need for something independent because we have excellent traffic officers who know the borough already. So it would be rather odd to bring somebody in from outside. But you know, yes, certainly looking at how we can all get around much better. Thank you. Thank you. Has everybody had their say so far on this particular one? Yeah, good. Right, so we're going to move over to Camilla Reeve now. And contributors, if you could keep your answers crisp and snappy, as we've only got half an hour left.
Hi. I'm a local business, not a shop, but a book publisher. And I wonder if there's any opportunity for having a register of empty shops that could be used by people like me as pop-ups, because COVID has hit my business very hard and there's nowhere to go. Normally I sell at face-to-face events, and I've got a plan which I'll talk to the ward councillor about, which is a kind of charity bookshop / coffee bar with training for unemployed and refugees to enable them to get jobs elsewhere. But I just wondered, do you have a register of empty properties that perhaps people like me could use on a temporary basis? Or do I need to go to each of the companies who own those properties and negotiate with them separately?
Okay, is that Alice? Are you wanting to take this one on?
Yeah, so I'm personally not aware of a register, and I may be wrong, and feel free to jump in. But I mean, we are doing these ward walks at the moment with Councillor Baker, and that might be the time to bring it up and also see if we can start working on a register or update the register if there is one already.
Thank you.
Excellent. Did I see you there waving? I can see Gemma, and I think I saw Brian as well. So let's go to Gemma and then Brian.
So sorry, Ms. Reeve, I'm not sure what ward you're in. I don't know if you could.
I'm Sheen.
Sheen, okay, because I was going to say in Mortlake and Barnes Common, we have a very, very good town centre manager on this call, Emma Robinson. And she does keep a list of, you know, with the town team, a list of empty properties and has good knowledge of the landlords. But I don't know if there's anything similar, and perhaps Sheen councillors can tell you if there's anything similar in Sheen.
Okay, Brian, can you tell us?
Well, there isn't, and I would love to pursue this. I think it's a brilliant idea. I myself, with one of my mentees, used a pop-up shop in Sloane Square, and we got huge amount of business and a great future contract. And clearly at this time, there are lots of shops going begging, and people need somewhere to go and sell. My problem, I presume, is the landlords. I don't know if they need to give special permission or whether the council gets involved in it. So I have no idea how to take that further. Perhaps you would know that, Gareth.
It's really an individual transaction basis, I understand it, Brian. And I'm sure that if Camilla wants to contact all of the Sheen councillors, that you'd all be more than happy to meet and discuss her idea, either virtually or socially distanced over a coffee in one of the excellent local businesses.
That would be really cool. Should I write to someone in particular?
No, just
yeah, you can find. And we will have your email address, I think, Camilla. So I will ask one of my team to send you the contact details.
That would be magic. Thank you very much.
Someone's just,
perfect. Thank you for your question. Oh, yeah. Jana.
Someone's just come in on
yes.
the saying that there's someone from East Sheen Village who would happily help an empty shop. So there's obviously some sort of town teamish thing in East Sheen.
That could be Borry Kiss on the. If it's Borry,
it is.
Borry.
Yeah, Borry Kiss is our excellent town centre manager, and she was on the walk with myself and Councillor Marcel, and we were talking about the empty shops. So yeah.
Great stuff. We will make sure you will get in touch. Camilla.
That's really grand. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so Bernie and Karen here. Bernie and Karen, you have a question, I understand.
Good evening, councillors. Question for the East Sheen ward for the 3 councillors. What's the best way to get the plans from TfL for the 5 million spend for Milestone Green? And how can we have a proper consultation about it? I sense that the council is asking people about it, but we're not getting the information. What can we do as a council or a group of residents in a ward with you to get the plans and have a proper consultation about it? I echo everyone's comments about the dangerous junction. And the plans that I saw a while ago seem to increase the risk to cyclists as well. I also think that the plans don't allow for proper social distancing, or wouldn't have done when they were first put together. So I think a proper consultation would be good for pedestrians and for cyclists and for COVID purposes. So what can we do? Because I hear a bit of hopelessness in terms of what we're trying to do. And it's like that we don't seem to be able to engage with TfL as a council. So what can we do to change that, please?
Okay, I can see Seamus is raising his hand, and I expected him to. So Seamus, off you go.
All right, thank you, Bernie, for your very valid question. I have emailed the project manager for this again for TfL, but I assumed she's furloughed, but she's not responding to her emails. And I would also hope that the consultation, I know that I think Zani, is her name, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the project manager. She has worked with local cycling groups and local businesses about the development of Stone Green Junction. But I think the danger is that the consultation, it needs to be, quite large in the area rather than just a few local businesses and a few local residents, because it will impact a lot of people. From Sheen Lane going from 2 lanes at the junction heading from south to north into 1 lane will create problems. And also the whole plans were still subject to the traffic engineers on how the traffic light system would work at that corner, because when you go from 2 lanes to 1 lane and you're trying to turn left and right, and for cyclists, it is going to be quite a challenge. But unfortunately, as of from, I sent another email yesterday, nothing back from TfL. I assume because of the project manager being furlonged, there's been no response yet.
Okay, Julia Cambridge, I can see you wanted to come in.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I totally concur with Seamus there. And hello, Bernie. Again, Bernie is one of our stalwarts, knows more about traffic than most people in East Sheen, and always comes forward with the pertinent questions. It is so frustrating. Zen, who Seamus is talking about, is not replying. I mean, when we went to the meetings, we were told not to take photographs of the plans. So I've sort of got the plans in my head. I'm happy to tell Bernie, as I'm sure any of us would be, the sorts of things that they were planning. But it was very obvious at those meetings that there were some problems with their offer and their proposition, and they're things that I'm not even sure would work totally. And I think they were also missing some things which we, as East Sheen residents, would see as wanting in that junction. So we're going to keep at it. I mean, Bernie says a feeling of hopelessness here. I mean, it's so key and important to us. It really is. I can describe to you what I saw, as I'm sure the other councillors can. But as far as when the consultation is coming, we don't know.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Brian, Marcel.
Thank you, Gareth. Bernie, I actually ignored instructions and did take photographs of the plans, and I do have them, and I'm very happy to send them to you. I also happen to know who the new person is at TfL responsible for the project, so I can give you that information as well. So if you want to email me, we can start corresponding.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Brian. Okay, so we are going to move to Ian Haddow.
Unmute. Thanks very much for allowing me on.
Not at all.
Last time I spoke to you was at the Hammersmith Bridge inquiry that we had at St Michael's. Many, and that's my concern. I'm really concerned about Hammersmith Bridge and the effect that the Hammersmith Bridge will have on the traffic of this borough when the site of the Stag Brewery starts to get underway. Now, I trust that that probably will before Hammersmith Bridge is up and running. Can you not emphasise on TfL or the GLA or the Mayor of London that we build a jetty at the site where barges can come and load up with rubble? The barges will be able to take something between 15 and 20 lorry loads of rubble that will save 15 or 20 lorry loads actually carbonising the air, and also 15 to 20 lorry loads off the road, making it a little bit more traffic free.
Ian, are you talking about the Mortlake Brewery site?
Yes,
for the jetty. Yeah.
There, if you look closely, there is, I think you might find that there used to be the remnants of one many moons ago, which can probably be restored. And in any case, a temporary jetty is easy to install. And, you know, I mean, they might say, well, you know, low tides, etc. You can work around that by putting it at high tide.
Okay.
Now, I am seriously concerned that Hammersmith Bridge is going to take years. It may even take a decade, because of what Paul says, without that temporary bridge going across, where you could actually put the people and the cyclists who are on the bridge at the moment on that temporary bridge, which will give them access, therefore, the workers access, therefore, to work freely.
Indeed. Okay, thank you very much for that question. That one for the Mortlake and Barnes Common councillors, I imagine. Gemma.
This is something that was raised in the report for the planning application, but I appreciate it was about 400 pages, so not every person read it. As I was sitting on the planning committee, I did read it. There was some suggestion about that, but there were some concerns by London Port Authority about the possibility of that. However, with the application, there were 3 applications and 2 of them were approved and 1 was refused. And the 2 that were approved were obviously about the building of the site. And there was a request, a condition to look at that, the means to help with the construction. So I know that that is something that's been looked at, but I think there were also some concerns because the river is very shallow at that part of the towards the lake. I mean, I don't know if you walk down there, you have to go out quite far. So these barges, as I've been told by the planning officers and construction, the barges are actually very deep. And so you'd have to put the jetty out sort of pretty much across into the middle of the river. So, which would obviously stop a lot of the activities that happen on the river, because as well as the Hammersmith Bridge taking a long time, the Stag Brewery, when it does start, will also take an equally long time. But I do know that that was one of the conditions that we had on the application that was approved.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Brian?
Thank you, Gareth. Actually, Councillor Avon would like to comment. Could you unmute him, please?
Please, yes. I can't see Paul on my screen.
I know,
so thank you for
that's the problem. I am his spokespiece.
You're his representative on Earth, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I was concerned, Gareth, that you were ignoring me. I know you would never do that, because I raised my hands earlier about.
I'm so sorry.
Apology accepted, Gareth. I know you would never try and silence me.
The idea, but go on.
Because I tried to talk about the mast issue earlier, in which I work with residents both on Rosemary Gardens and also the North Waterway bus station. And I echo the concerns of residents. Residents were incredibly concerned about both those applications. And the visual impact on the bus station, the surrounding area is appalling, and Rosemary Gardens is a conservation area. So I share the concerns of residents on that. But anyway, over to Stag Brewery. I think the gentleman raises a very important question. And one of the, first of all, it sort of really does demonstrate how we're trying to fit in this development into a very poorly into an area which is just can't handle that level of housing without the infrastructure, which I was talking about earlier, and how frustrating it is. And this is a planning issue. It's not a criticism. It's a planning issue as it stands in the country. How we can't join up other applications which are going on in the area to see how they will impact us holistically. And I guess what I'm talking about there, specifically Barnes Hospital, for example, is an application which was approved a while ago. And again, that combined with the Stag Brewery will have an incredible impact, and not a positive one, on residents, existing residents in this ward. Barnes Hospital, for example, it's from memory 82 units, plus a SEND school, plus a mental health facility. Of course, I stress I'm very much in favour of that, but it's a very, very difficult area to access. The same as the Mortlake Brewery, where we all know we have Sheen Lane, the level crossing, and it's very difficult to get into the site. So I really hope in some way, shape and form, we can connect these other applications and how they can all be done if this, in whatever format the Stag Brewery does go forward, to ensure that residents' lives are made an absolute misery, because it's going to have an appalling effect. So getting back to the gentleman's point, I think he raises Gemma, Councillor Curran obviously commented on that in terms of that specific point, but the more profound point is, how is this going to work and impact the area? That's what I have a deep concern about. But anyway, that will come out. But just a general point in terms of how these things are just not linked. The Hammersmith Bridge, Barnes Hospital, Mortlake Brewery. I really fear for how it's going to affect the ward's residents in their day-to-day lives. Just a general point. Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, we are going to move on now to the next question. There's a lot of chat going on in here, folks, which makes it difficult for me to find it, but it is Lynn Woolley. Lynn Woolley has the next question. Are you here, Lynn?
Hello, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my question. So I've just got 3 points, and I'll try and keep them really brief so other people get a chance. One is just to thank Tara for her transport strategy question, because that was something that I wanted to raise. I'm particularly concerned that we've got some major projects going on at the moment. We have St Leonard's Road being resurfaced in the next few weeks, but there doesn't seem to be any consideration of the fact that during the lockdown, that was used really extensively by a lot of families on their bikes, and also just walking as a safe space, safe route to go to and from different areas around the community. It's creeping back into its usual rat run that we've kind of had for ever since I've lived in this area 7 years ago, and it's a real shame to see that kind of slipping back into what it was and losing the potential that it kind of showed that it could have as a sort of multi-user space with cars, delivery vans, bikes, people, etc., using that area. And I do think that, like Tara mentioned, I'm a bit surprised that there isn't more of an overarching strategy and also local wayfinding projects that look at local movement, as well as the sort of the pass-throughs that happen a lot in our borough with having the South Circular, etc. here, that those are there for each village area, but then they also link up about the impact across them. And I would really like to see a broader transport plan that looks at all different needs, and that aren't, it feels at the moment like there's lots of little individual projects for different needs that are running, rather than a more holistic plan that looks at all users. I won't go on about transport anymore because I think there's been a lot of discussion around that. The other thing that I wanted to raise was around community spaces. Okay. So we manage a community hall. I'm a volunteer who manages a community hall, along with a lot of other volunteers I know who manage different halls around the area. Our community space is used by nearly 30 people. Trying to get our community halls back up and running under the social distancing is incredibly difficult, particularly as a group of volunteers with limited time and capacity to do that. And I am really worried. We have like one of my volunteer roles is a girl guide leader. We run over 20 groups with we have nearly 400 girls that access our activities every single week in halls across the area, Barnes, East Sheen, and also going into Kew and Ham. I've already heard from some of our community halls to say they won't be opening for the foreseeable future. We did move online, but I just really feel like our community space situation is like a ticking bomb that no one seems to be talking about, that we will basically not have much community space that is able to open for a whole range of logistical reasons. To get our space reopened for our 20-30 hirers a week, which include everything from an over 50s table tennis group to a under 5s football team, it will take significant amount of work and time in my spare time, and I know that a lot of volunteers are in the same situation of desperately trying to reopen our community hubs so they can help with the recovery, but feeling like there is just no support to help us do that. And I know that our community space is not the only space to be in that situation. We've been talking to a lot of community halls, scout halls, the church hall that we use to hire some of our groups that have told us they won't be going back until January 2021. It means that we will lose vast volumes of community space. And I do have real concerns about the impact of that on social cohesion, well-being, loneliness, mental health, and health in general. I've seen my girls suffer through the pandemic. They desperately want to get back together, but trying to find the space to do that is really, really difficult. And I guess that kind of leads into my final area around mental health and well-being, and just wanting, it's been flagged as a key issue through fish work and the work of Mortlake Association, and I would like to know a little bit more about what the council will be doing alongside the local clinical health commissioning groups and PCN to focus on mental health for our residents.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So what I suggest is that, as you said, we've discussed a lot of transport. So if we can park that one, and I'm sure that any of the councillors that want to come back to you, if you drop them an email, they'll be happy to discuss that. Community spaces, who wants to take community space and or mental health impact of COVID? Alice.
I think community spaces, and thank you for raising it, because I think there are going to be knock-on effects of COVID that perhaps we haven't thought about, because we just don't know what's going to happen, how long it's going to go on for. It's interesting that you're saying a lot of these spaces are going on into are not opening until January 2021, which is quite surprising, but that's the situation they're in. Is there something where we can look, maybe particularly in the summer and autumn months, but maybe looking to use some of our outside spaces? Is that a possibility? Is that something that we could have a look at? And sorry, I'm asking it back to you, whether you sort of say no because we do X, Y, and Z. But I mean, that would maybe be an interesting thing that we can look into.
I know through the National Youth Agency for England has basically set the guidance for going back to youth work, and that includes for the big voluntary groups like guiding, scouting, cadets, all that kind of stuff, as well as the smaller little youth groups that run. They've done a great programme and risk assessment around how to go back to outdoor face-to-face meetings in small bubbles, etc. So that guidance is there, and we will be meeting outdoors, but it has to be in a safe outdoor space. We've been using Richmond Park and a local campsite that is about to reopen. We will be using that as well. But it does pose an issue when a lot of our groups are sort of 20, 30, 40 kids, and we're limited to 15 per group. We're then having to run back-to-back meetings, and there's a lot of restrictions around where we might have one volunteer that runs multiple groups. All of a sudden they can't do that anymore because they're not allowed to cross between the different groups. They have to stay with one small group. So it also means that it stretches us in a way that we weren't expecting to be stretched, I guess, and the guidance is constantly adjusting. So yes, in the short term, we would look to move outdoors and do a mix of outdoor and online provision, but I think come October, the nights will be getting darker and it'll be much more difficult to do that kind of provision. Most of us are meeting in the evenings. So we do need a safe, dry space within which to use. We're trying to do our best with our venues that we own to get them back up and running for everyone, but it's complicated. I mean, some days we have 6 or 7 users and we're meant to clean in between each and every single user and split the spaces up, etc., etc. So there's an awful lot to do.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time, but would you mind if I contacted you, because I think this is an interesting thing, but obviously not something that we're going to be able to fix right now. So would you mind if I contacted you about this? And I'll get the email address from one of the Richmond Council team. Is that all right?
Yeah,
sure.
That's
absolutely. And what we will also do, our community engagement team is on this call, and what all of you have been saying about community engagement and reopening halls and finding ways and clever fixes will be music to their ears. So they will also be in contact. We'll have your email as you registered for the call, so they will definitely be in touch. Okay.
Gareth, could I just make a quick comment, because I think that's quite important. The point is that this whole situation we're in is new for everyone. And while the government and others try to provide guidance, of course that's high-level guidance, and every situation is different. And the council does not have the answers to everything, or cannot immediately solve. So I think exactly what you just talked about with Alice, about getting in touch with your councillors, looking at your specific situation, and just talking through what the options are. And that's probably that is the best way we can help as councillors. Is not immediately to be saying we can come with answers, but if we can look at your specific uses and what might work and what else is in the community, then we can work through some practical ways to support you, especially as you say, as we get into October and the weather starts changing. So I just want to make that point, because I think that's not just for you, that's for everyone.
Thank
you.
Excellent.
Specific situation we need to look at. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you so much for your question, and I'm sorry we have to move on. I've got 2 questions now coming in, one from Simon Danziger and one from Luke Tenya about the local fund. Simon, you go first, and if we can unmute Luke to stand by, and what we might try to do is do the 2 questions together. Shake it up a bit. So Simon.
Thank you, Gareth. First, and just very quickly, a huge thanks to everyone at the council who supported the OSO Arts Centre Crisis Kitchen. It wouldn't have happened without so many different people within the council lending us their support, RCVS, the food safety team, the partnerships team, and some grant funding as well. And actually, I didn't realise Luke was on this, but Luke, thank you hugely to the Barnes Fund as well, because it couldn't have happened without you. Any case, the Arts Centre is now repurposing back again to being an arts centre. And the question of the local area fund, fantastic initiative. Just wondering what the timelines are. We're hoping to open the Arts Centre in September, and we put in an application supported by councillors back at the beginning of July. Just wondering what the timeline is for that process of awarding and allocating grants.
Okay, we'll take that. And also then, Luke, if you can quickly come in with your question, and we'll take them both together.
Okay, well, echo Simon's words on great initiative. It was a good video which mentioned that the funding will be based on local priorities. So my question is, on what criteria of need or wishes by ward are those local priorities assessed and decided? And I suppose the follow-up question is, will those be made known before or sooner, so that applications can either be made according to those, rather than lots of applications come in which may take a lot of time for people to put in and would be not according to the criteria?
Okay, who has, well, the question is going to be, who's read the briefing pack on community awards?
Well, maybe I can just say say something first, Gareth, and
yes,
actually, well, And as you were saying, Simon, we should absolutely return the thank you to you and all you did throughout it. And actually, it's good you being on, Luke. It's the danger of listing thanks to all organisations is that you inevitably leave some out, particularly ones that is involved. So the Barnes Fund, as it does, quietly works behind the scenes to support all the groups, and there are a number of others on here. I think the answer, and Gareth, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is a new initiative, and so we're working through this, and this is new to us as councillors as well. Luke, in terms of the criteria, there has in the past been sort of local plans with some of those criteria. I think I'm not sure there's a specific set of criteria at the moment. We're using our judgment as councillors and as the council for that at this time is probably the best answer that I can give, rather than I haven't seen a list of criteria that we're going against. Although there is an overall local plan, and we will be using that, and also judging against what comes forward. I don't have the timing for you, Simon, and I know, well, you're technically in Mortlake and Barnes Common, so not in my ward, and I know obviously the council has had a lot to deal with. So I imagine that's a question that we can take away and come back to you, knowing that that we want to get on with it. I don't think there hasn't been a rigid time frame set for applications and for awards coming forward, but I'm sure that can be taken away in a time coming back to you.
Yeah,
Gemma, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, because I think from my understanding, and I am familiar with quite a lot of the applications that have come through. I've obviously seen yours, Simon, and also yours, Luke, for the Barnes Fund. So a lot of them have been copied in. If you've done them online, it's sent an alert to the local councillors. But as I understood it was that then we would be contacted by the community engagement team who would discuss, and then we'd be asked to feedback on that. So I have seen, obviously a lot of people, local groups have copied councillors in on it, and if you've done it through if you've done it online, then there's been an alert to us as well. So I think we're just waiting for the engagement team to come to us with the next step, and I don't think there's been a specific timetable on that as yet. I think it's obviously dependent on how many were received.
Absolutely. What's going to happen is the community engagement team will be sending around the information regarding the community funds very soon to those who haven't received them, and will be able to answer any questions that anybody may have. I mean, at the moment, as Paul and Dem said, it's a new initiative. It's been knocked slightly sideways by having to deal with COVID or COVID. It's new to go into the funds. So it's been knocked slightly sideways, but it is something which we're pressing ahead with. And of course, other funding streams are staying available, such as the Civic Pride Fund, for example, which has been very widely used in recent times. So I mean, the time to start thinking about it is now. So that's the key thing, is to start thinking about it now, get the applications, get the ideas, and start the conversations with the board councillors now, and then we can press forward. 3 or 4 months down the line, chances are that a decision may have been taken. So now is the option, is the optimum. Okay, we are going to move we are at time, but I do want to deal with this one because it is about the closure to traffic in Richmond Park, which I'm sure that nobody on this panel has an opinion on the closure of traffic on Richmond Park. So where are we? Fiona, you have a question. What is being done about the through traffic ban in Richmond Park? Are you there? Oh no, Fiona. Oh no, Fiona's still here. Just coming after Emma Robinson in the list for the Tech Elves. Fiona Lavacek, I think. Hello.
Hello, sorry.
Hello, there we are.
No, this is Ellie. I'm a tech elf. I believe that Fiona has said in the chat that her microphone doesn't work.
Oh,
so
I see. Okay.
A question for her.
Okay, so the question is, as advertised on the tin, what is being done about the through traffic ban in Richmond Park? I'm looking around. I'm looking for raised hands, and I can't see any raised hands. It's Seamus Joyce. There we go.
Yes, as one of the many stakeholders in Richmond Park, this is obviously creating a lot of email traffic, text traffic, next door traffic, etc., but no traffic in Richmond Park at the moment. I was disappointed to find out via Facebook today that it would be nice for stakeholders to be informed and kept in the loop by the Royal Parks. But I found out on Facebook that cyclists were coming back on Saturday. So that is an example on how the Royal Parks are communicating with me as one of the stakeholders, along with many other people in tonight's forum. That is disappointing. They announced about 2 weeks ago that they were going to reduce cut-through traffic, and then nothing else has come out about it. So everyone's in limbo. Nobody knows, is it going to be 100% cut-through traffic? Are they going to allow some local traffic to come through? It is going to affect, for example, residents using the park for short journeys to get to Kingston Hospital, etc., and for Ham and Petersham residents to get through the park. But at the moment, we have no new information from the Royal Parks, and hopefully we'll get something out in the next couple of weeks. And I'm sure the council will relay that along with the local councillors on any updates. I think a lot of people would like to see cut-through traffic reduced, but not completely reduced. For example, if everyone within a 5-mile radius of Richmond Park could use it for their local journeys, that'd be fantastic. But then how do you enforce that? We all know of the constant flow of traffic from the A3 to join the South Circular, and they use Sheen Lane as a rat run and cause chaos right across the Sheen, Mortlake and Barnes, the whole area. So, as from what I know, the Royal Parks are not communicating to their stakeholders, and an example of that was today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Seamus. Julia, did I see you had a hand up?
I'm going to be really brief because I'm an East Sheen councillor for anyone who's just joined or has joined in the last little while. So basically the movement strategy came out, we know that, and it kind of left things open for the traffic in the park. It said, we will be announcing something and it will be then you trialled for 6 months. And that's left residents really confused. Does that mean that maybe it's going to be a time restriction? You can't before some time or after some time? Whether it is banning it altogether, I doubt that, but who knows? Obviously, Seamus is right. From the 1st of August, cyclists can now, from then on, cycle at weekends, which they haven't been able to do. But as for cars, I'm sorry, we're left in the dark at the moment. And I think the movement strategy and the park need to get on with it. And we need to see what this 6-month trial is.
Okay, are there any other councillors wanting to get on? And this one I will, and then I will allow one further question, as you know, as long as nobody sort of kicks off and says I want to go home and have my tea.
Gareth, can I just quickly comment
yes.
on that, because you know this is a good example of 2 things where there will be many opinions on what should happen in the park, but the earlier point about things being connected, and I do think it's important that. Obviously the council engage with the Royal Parks, because the Royal Parks, which controls it, you know, they've got one set of view of the world and motivation, but they don't necessarily see or have the consequences in the areas around. So I think it is very important for people and local residents to be making their views known of what they want to happen through their councillors. You know, and up to the administration to be then taking to the Royal Park, because I don't think it's right. I don't think we should just be leaving it to the Royal Park and just saying let's just see what they do. We've got to engage them now about all those consequences and what people think. I mean, I'm really worried about if they do ban it. I understand from the point of the park, but the knock-on effect it's going to have in the surrounding area. So again, you just get to the practical points of it's going to cause other problems if they do.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Paul. Right, we are going to have one final question, ladies and gentlemen. I apologise for those of you who have been waiting patiently. But Colin Mannix, if you're still on the call.
I think he may have left.
I think he's gone. Okay, so Tim Leonard.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you,
go.
Gareth. Hello. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to to get on, actually. I'm sorry, it's actually another transport one. And actually, I appreciate councillors won't have seen the very latest announcements from the government today and last night around a real Department for Transport focus on actually properly supporting walking and cycling in the area. But what I'm kind of wondering from councillors, and we talked a lot about the brewery, we talked about Richmond Park, talked about Hammersmith Bridge, and we've seen, one of the earlier questions talked about how we've seen many more people kind of cycling in the area. And I'm just wondering what councillors think they can really do in their individual wards, because we're getting back to 80% odd of pre kind of COVID-19 traffic. And I think you'll agree that a lot of the roads in both of our wards are really deeply, deeply unpleasant to be places on bicycles. And if we want to encourage our kids to be cycling to school or to make it easier for people to cycle to stations or to shops, then it kind of feels like we need to do something more than, just make Milestone Green look a bit prettier. I wonder what councillors thought about that.
Okay, who wants to take this one first? I'll take Alice, then I'll take Seamus.
Okay, Tim, I'm going to have a go because I think you raise a fair point, like what can we do? I think there's a few things, and it's one of the things when I mentioned earlier about the station audits, station lighting audits, because I think it's got to be a joined up sort of thought of like what we can make the whole place to feel safer, or sorry, what we can do to make the whole place feel safer, to make people want to travel on public transport. But I also think, and I have a horrible feeling I'm about to nominate myself for this one, but I think there's also a confidence thing around cycling. For example, I am not a great cyclist. I struggle with it, but I know that I should get better. And so I think it's about using some of our sort of training sessions that the council put on, and it may even be doing things like videos saying if I can do it, everybody can do it, those sorts of things as well. Thinking outside the box with some of our initiatives of how we can promote cycling, so it's not just a you must do this, but more of a kind of inclusivity thing. Does that help answer what I think we could do? Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, no, I think it does definitely partly help, because that's certainly one of the kind of acknowledged issues that people raise when they come around to it. But I'm thinking also about the whole world of kind of perceived safety as well, because however confident you are on a bike, there's still going to be someone who's going to close past you or cut you up and make you think, I'm not sure I want to make that bike journey again. That's my
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to bring Seamus in now.
Thank you. Yes, well, I think I nearly choked on my cornflakes with excitement this morning when I read that the government are bringing out these new great ideas for cycling and walking plans. But I think it's just important that they're not just pushed in any old street or any old road. There needs to be some thought put into it. And the potentially cycling lanes, they need to go on the right roads, and we need to look at the impact that will have. If that's going to, for a great example of this was about 6 weeks ago, TfL decided to reduce Park Lane from south to north, from 3 lanes of traffic to 1 lane of traffic.
That's gorgeous, isn't it?
It is, but
yeah,
it's called. It's having great. It's working great if you're traveling south to north, but you've got a park inside, and it's choking traffic in Westminster because you've gone from 3 lanes to 1 lane, and you've got a fantastic park inside the wall where people could have parked, where people could have cycled. Sorry, and then when you go from north to south, you have to go on the same south to north lane, which is fine. But the point I'm making is that is an example of where traffic lanes can go wrong, because it will completely over half the questions tonight from our kind residents was about traffic and the chaos of traffic. Now, if we put in more cycle lanes, it's going to reduce traffic lanes and narrow lanes. So while I welcome new cycle lanes, we do need to work with residents and businesses to make sure that we don't kill the car user altogether.
Okay, I can see that Alice is wanting to get back in. I'm casting my eye around on the other councillors.
So I think the one thing I would say, and whilst Seamus, I in part agree with you about obviously making sure that we are communicating with residents and working with residents and businesses. I think if the pandemic has kind of shown us anything, it has really highlighted the environmental impact that we have. I mean, you think there's been stories of how places have seen the Himalayas for the first time in like 30, 40 years. I mean, that's really quite astounding. And I think we perhaps need to be thinking about what has COVID taught us, what has this pandemic taught us about the world we want to live in and the air we want to breathe going forward. So whilst, as I say, in part I do agree with you, Councillor Joyce, there is this sort of element of we can't necessarily always stay the same, and actually we need to be looking at the good things that, you know, it's an example of I don't video call my family, and yet in this pandemic I video called my family and had a quiz night, and we're going to continue that after the pandemic. And it's those sorts of things that what good happened in this pandemic that we might want to take forward. And I do think one of those things is environmental air quality and stuff. Sorry.
Okay, so Gemma, I can see you there.
I think although Councillor Bridges Westcott makes a valid point in terms of the environmental benefit, and I certainly know Mums for Lungs have talked about, and friends who suffer from asthma have talked about the positive impact. I think the other issue now is in the post-COVID but pre-vaccine COVID, which we're kind of in at the moment, is that people are being encouraged to use public transport, but then that public transport is very much reduced in terms of how many people can get on a bus. So whereas before, you know, when I would get on a bus to go into the centre of London, I might be standing, you know, with my face towards someone else's face. Now there's a much more limited, and so you are asking for how are they going to get around, and people are actually also feeling a lot safer driving because their sort of own bubble. And I think that's what we're in. We're in a sort of post-COVID where there was no traffic on the road. And we're in this pre-sort of vaccine COVID where we've got to distance from people, and we've got to feel safe in our environment. And so unfortunately more people are going into their cars, and we've got to find a sort of an easy solution in between those two, where people can feel safe on their bikes, people can feel safe on public transport, and people can feel safe if they have to, if they're sheltering and they've been locked in. And, you know, I deliver for an elderly lady who, even though she was meant to be sheltering, would get in her car and drive to the pharmacy to pick up her prescription because she just had to get out of her car. So I think there's those sort of things that we need to consider as well. And we are in a very sort of interim period. And unfortunately, I think we are going to see it get worse until it gets better. But hopefully, following on Tim's response, you know, once it settles down and we are able to go back onto public transport in the way we perhaps used to, perhaps with masks, hopefully then people will start getting back on their bikes and using their cars less.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. So I'm just casting a quick eye over Brian and Paul Avon, and good. Nobody's coming in. Thank you very much. Okay, a little over time, but I think you'll agree that that was a question which was well worth asking. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking part this evening. And thank you to all of the councillors, Paul Hodgins, Julia Cambridge, Seamus Joyce, Brian Marcel, Paul Avon, Alice Bridges Westcott, and Gemma Curran, who were there to answer all of your questions. I was remiss right at the very height, I think, of the introductions by not mentioning that Rita Palmer and Afra Brandreth are on holiday, and that's why they're not here with you this evening. But my apologies for not offering their apologies earlier. So thank you to everybody that's taken part. Thank you again, those groups, the community groups that are represented on this call this evening. Thank you so much for everything that you have done throughout the entirety of this pandemic, and for everything that I'd be assured you will do. To our community engagement team for being on hand to help with all of these stuff. If you have questions which didn't get raised, then do feel free to email any of the councillors or email to me, and I'll make sure that they get fielded out and that you get a response. Thank you to our comms team, and of course, chiefly, thank you to yourselves, because it is you who make these events worthwhile having. So thank you very much. I trust you all will have a pleasant and enjoyable evening. Good night.